Who are you talking to?
Somebody's up there.
Somebody's listening to you?
Connor.
You think Connor's listening?
That's God listening.
God's listening?
Who's that walking down the road coming just ahead of us? God is singing that.
God is singing that?
And God is walking.
God is walking? Where's God walking to?
Who's that walking down the road coming just ahead of us? God.
God is
walking down Heaven's Road.
God's walking down Heaven's Road?
Right there.
Right there? Alright, can you tell him bye? Tell him bye.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
It's Sunday today?
Yeah.
I will say, it's snowing and it's raining.
It's snowing and it's raining?
Okay. Let's say that.
I said it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell him bye. So you'll see him next week.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Hope we can go in snow.
Oh, I don't think it'll be around next week.
Okay.
Alright, bye.
Bye. Hey, what you have?
Alright. Tonight we are going to continue with our people at the cross, and this week we are talking about Jesus. And I want to start off with what the book says about Jesus. It says, they crucified Jesus in the place called Golgotha, place of a skull. They wrecked his body, spat on him, and mocked him, but he was not bitter. Jesus looked down at the mob below him and prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jeers filled his ears, heads wagged, saying, Aha, you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross. The chief priests and scribes welcomed this derision and joined in. He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross that we may see and believe. Suddenly, although it was only the 6th hour, darkness cloaked the whole land. 3 hours later, Jesus cried, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? The scribes recognized his words. He was quoting David. But many of the bystanders were vexed by his speech. They did not speak Aramaic and thought he was calling the prophet Elijah. Jesus said, I thirst. Someone filled a sponge with sour wine and gave it to him to drink, saying, Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down. It is hard to say whether this was just part of the mockery or if the man was serious. The sacrifice was now behind him. Jesus cried, It is finished. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, and breathed his last. What happened next was inexplicable. The sun shone once more. Earthquakes disturbed Jerusalem, opening many of the tombs outside the city. Some reported that the veil in the temple had been torn, not from bottom to top, as some would have done, but from top to bottom. There was a general feeling among many of the witnesses that a great injustice had just been committed, and they returned home beating their breast. That Passover was different. That year, as Jewish families in Jerusalem gathered around their tables to eat lamb and unleavened bread, everyone was talking about the day Emmanuel died for man. That is, in a nutshell, what happened. Just a little bit of the torture, a little bit of what Jesus went through. And the reason that this author decided to put Jesus in this book as part of a person at the cross is because Jesus had the most difficult part in the crucifixion. The most difficult part. And the reason he had the most difficult part is because he's the one who actually had to go through it. He went through every bit of it. We've talked about in previous lessons, the apostles left. Some of the apostles didn't even come. We talked last week that the women were there for every step of the way, but they were just there as witnesses. They didn't endure any of this. They didn't endure the mockery. They didn't endure the beatings. They didn't endure the wine that they gave him when he said he was thirsty. The burned, I lost my train of thought. The evilness that they were doing. He actually went through it. And that's why they wanted to focus on Jesus today. And back then, the law said a man was cursed if he was hung on a tree. Now, when I think of being hung on a tree, I think of Judas. Because Judas went out and hung himself on a tree. They considered Jesus being hung on a tree because what was Jesus hung on? A cross. A cross made of what? Wood. Where does wood come from? A tree. So he was hung on a cross. He was hung on a tree. So Jesus was looked at as being cursed. Now, so when they saw a cross, they think of it as a curse. Now fast forward to today. How do we think of the cross? We have a totally different view of the cross, don't we? We don't think of it as a curse. We celebrate it, if you will. We have necklaces, we have earrings, we have shirts, we have rings, we have car decals, we have crosses as statues in our house, as yard signs, our yard stakes. We have crosses as decoration, as pictures. We use it as a celebratory thing, a good thing. If we thought of it as being a curse, would we be wearing it around our neck? No. So much the view of the cross has changed in so many years. But back then, it was considered a curse. So again, just another slap at Jesus, the most perfect man, innocent, pure. But he is cursed in this law because he was hung. He is cursed. And not only is he cursed, the ground he is on is cursed. His family is cursed. That's how they view it. And we'll get to that later on in the devotional about how they purify their land and their families if someone in their family is hung, so that they are not all cursed, but just that one individual person. So we know he had to go through it. We now know that it was looked at as a curse upon Jesus. It was a curse because he was hung. Why did he do it? Why did Jesus go through this crucifixion? He had to. He had to. Did he want to? I didn't say he wanted to. He had to. The following 9 verses tell us that Jesus had to suffer this horrific act. And I wrote them down, but I did not write them all out. I'll let you all do that. But it's Matthew 16:21, Mark 8:31, Luke 9:22, Luke 17:25, Luke 24:26, Acts 17:3, and Acts 26:23. All 9 of those verses say Jesus had to suffer. It had to happen this way. This act had to happen. It was predicted in the Old Testament, and it had to be fulfilled. So if you were to ask Jesus today, well, if we saw him, and you went up to him, and you said, "Hey, Jesus, did you want to go through that crucifixion?" I would bet he would say, "No, but I had to. For everything to work out, I had to." And we do that sometimes, don't we? Don't we do things we don't want to do, but we know we've got to do them? And nothing will be on that we will ever do will be on the scale of giving up our life for somebody else, being killed to save somebody else. But he had to do it. And I often think of this when I wrote this, the best thing I can correlate it to is the workplace. There's some things, I don't care what job you have. I don't care if you work in a restaurant, if you work in an office building, if you work in construction, if you work, you name it, a cafeteria, a school, bus stop, whatever you can think of, you can fill in the blank. There is going to be a day that you have to do something you just don't want to do, but you have to do it. It's part of your job. It's something you have to go through. As a parent, the biggest thing that comes to my mind is punishment. When they get to that age, when they do something that has to be corrected, that you have to put a stop to it, you may not want to do the discipline or the level of discipline that's needed, but you know you must do it. You must do it for the long road, for the future, for the outcome. Same thing with Jesus. He may have not necessarily wanted to do the crucifixion or to die, but he did it. He had to do it. And by him doing this, he did 3 things for us. There's 3 parts in his crucifixion that saves us. Jesus' saving role has 3 parts: redemption, propitiation, and purification. If Jesus had not accomplished our salvation, his death would not have been any different than any of. Okay, I read that totally wrong. If Jesus had not done this, if he had not accomplished this task, if he had not accomplished being crucified, His death would not have been any different than anybody else that was hung on a cross. He would have just been another body, another one lost, a nobody. They would have been forgotten about, just the average Joe, just moving on. If he hadn't accomplished this, if he would have given up, if at any point in time he would have stopped, he would not have been any different than anybody else. He gave us redemption by dying on that cross. Well, how did he do that? Well, back then, redemption meant the redemption of being a slave. They were free. To us, is our redemption, because we're slaves to sin and guilt, aren't we? Every day. Every day we sin. We have guilt about things, or we're guilty of things, but we are redeemed by the blood that was shed on the cross. So he gave us redemption. He gave us freedom. He gave us a way out of sin. He also gave us propitiation. This is God was angry about the sin in the world. Angry. And the only solution he could give, the only solution he could come up with was to have his only son die on the cross. It was the only solution to rid the world of sin, to give us a chance of redemption, a chance to be free, a chance to make a decision of which way we're going to go. We take that for granted. We take that sacrifice of the sin of the Son for granted. The sin was so bad in the world, it took a human giving his life up to save us all. It took a human dying to save this world. How powerful is that? How powerful is that? The last thing he gave us is purification. This one I thought was kind of interesting. We were talking about the curses before, and this is where this comes in. The Persians would elevate the bodies from the ground and burn them off the ground so that the earth would not be polluted with death. Why? Because it was a curse. They believed it was a curse. So if they didn't touch the ground when they died, that ground wasn't cursed. So they burned them off of the ground. The Romans thought that being lifted up meant power. So they had Jesus up because they thought he was powerful. They wanted him to come down and save himself. They wanted him to show himself, to prove who he was, who he really said he was. So two totally different things here. The Persians lifted up to not be cursed. The Romans lifted up because that's power. That shows power. The body of Jesus was both purified the earth, it was elevated, and it displayed God's power. So when Jesus was crucified, he met the Persians' qualifications and he met the Romans' qualifications, but he did it on a level they didn't understand yet. They didn't get that. But he met both of theirs. So he was not a curse because his feet didn't touch the ground. So his family was not cursed. Again, in law at that time, it was cursed if you hung on the tree. But if you raised him up and his feet didn't touch, then it wasn't a curse. So that's how they got around the curse. We are purified from sin when we are baptized for the remission of our sins. That is our purification. All of our sins are washed away. We are made clean. We are purified. He gave us that chance. The book said sin is dirty. Water is pure. Water is clear. Water is clean. When we are baptized, we get rid of all the dirt and we are pure. So in conclusion, Jesus had the hardest role of all in the crucifixion, but he also had the most important role. Without him, we would not have the chance to go to heaven. We would all be living in sin with no way out. So yes, I thought it was kind of odd when I first looked at this and said, okay, they're doing a chapter on Jesus. We're talking about Jesus. We're talking about what he went through and everything that happened on the cross. Why would we do a chapter about him? But I really liked that chapter. I liked how I won't say turned it, but it's more focused on us, what he did for us. It was all for us, nothing for him. He had to do this, but not for himself. He had to do it for all of us, and that's what's most important. So that's what I want to leave you with this week. I hope everyone has a great week, and next week we will talk about the thief that was beside Jesus on the cross. So that's where we're going to go. As always, thanks for listening, and I will see you all here next week.